Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the stars through the main view screen when Lieutenant Kelly Brown called out from her station at communications. "Captain, we have something on long-range sensors," she said with excitement in her voice. "It looks like artificial structures around the fourth planet in this system." Jake felt his heart beat faster as he walked over to her console. After 3 years of deep space exploration, they had finally found what they were looking for. The Liberty carried 200 crew members on humanity's first major expedition beyond the outer colonies, and this was their first real contact with alien civilization. Lisa Carter hurried onto the bridge, carrying her tablet filled with sensor data. She was the chief science officer and had been waiting for this moment her entire career. "The structures are definitely not natural," she reported to Jake. "We're seeing massive orbital platforms and what appears to be a fleet of ships, unlike anything in our databases." Commander Rick Hayes, the tactical officer, moved to his station and began running scans on the alien vessels. His job was to keep the Liberty safe, and he took that responsibility seriously. "Captain, their ships are big," Rick said, looking at his readings. "Much bigger than ours, and there are at least 50 of them in formation around the planet." Jake nodded, and made his decision. "All stop. Maintain distance, but keep scanning. Lisa, I want you to prepare the first contact package." The first contact package was something humanity had worked on for decades. It contained mathematical sequences, pictures of Earth, samples of human music and art, and most importantly, a message of peace in multiple human languages. Carter worked quickly to prepare the transmission while the bridge crew watched the alien ships on their screens. The vessels were sleek and dark with curved hulls that seemed to flow like water. They moved in perfect formation, which suggested advanced coordination. "Package ready, Captain," Lisa announced. "Send it." Jake ordered. The transmission went out across space, carrying humanity's greeting to their first alien neighbors. The crew waited in silence as the signal traveled toward the alien fleet, and the alien flagship Warprime Kethva received the human transmission with disgust. He was a tall creature, with dark-scaled skin and bright yellow eyes that showed no mercy to those he considered weak. For over 1,000 years, his people, the Zephyrians, had conquered every species they encountered, and he saw no reason this would be different. The mathematical sequences meant nothing to him. The pictures of a blue world with soft creatures walking on 2 legs only confirmed what he already knew. These beings were weak, and their technology was primitive. Ekatha called his war council together in the command chamber of his ship. The other Zephyrian commanders gathered around him, their scales gleaming under the harsh lights. "They send us pictures and sounds," Kethva said with contempt. "They show us their soft bodies and peaceful intentions. They are prey animals trying to avoid being eaten." Subcommander Vextal nodded in agreement. "Their ship is small Warprim, 1 vessel against our entire battle fleet. They must know they cannot fight us, then they are wise to fear us," Kethva replied, "but wisdom will not save them. We will follow their ship back to their world and add another species to our collection." Back on the Liberty, the crew waited for a response to their peaceful message. Jake paced the bridge while Dr. Carter monitored the communication channels for any sign of alien contact. "Anything yet, Lisa?" Jake asked. "Nothing, Captain," she replied. "But wait, I'm getting something now." The main screen flickered and suddenly showed the bridge of the alien ship. The crew of the Liberty stared in shock at Warprime Kethva as he spoke in his harsh alien language. Even without translation, his meaning was clear. This was not a greeting, this was a threat. "Lisa, are you getting any of this?" Jake asked. "I'm trying to run it through the translation matrix, but Captain, I don't think we need translation to understand what he's saying." Rick Hayes looked up from his tactical station with alarm. "Captain, they're powering weapons. All 50 ships are targeting us." Jake felt his stomach drop as he realized their peaceful first contact had gone terribly wrong. These aliens weren't interested in friendship or trade. They were predators, and humanity had just painted a target on itself. "Red alert!" Jake shouted. "All hands to battle stations. Helm, give me maximum power to engines." The Liberty turned away from the alien fleet as energy weapons began firing across space. The first shots missed, but Jake knew they wouldn't stay lucky for long. "They're faster than us," Captain reported. "The helmsman, we can't outrun them." Jake watched the pursuing alien ships on his screen and made a hard choice. Plot a course for home. Emergency transmission to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact, and it's not friendly. Dr. Carter sent the warning message toward Earth while the Liberty fled through space with 50 alien warships chasing them. Jake knew this was just the beginning. The aliens had seen how weak humanity appeared, and they would follow the Liberty all the way back to Earth. As the Liberty jumped to hyperspace with the alien fleet right behind them, Jake realized that humanity was about to face its first real test in the galaxy, and they had No idea what they were up against. War Prime Kethver stood in his command chamber watching the human ship flee toward their home system. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he studied the tactical display showing the tiny vessel, desperately trying to escape his battle. Fleet Subcommander Vextal, he called to his second-in-command. What do our sensors tell us about this human vessel? Vextal approached with a data tablet in his clawed hands. War Prime. Their ship is primitive but functional. Basic fusion drives and simple weapons. Their technology appears to be several hundred years behind our own. Kethver nodded with approval. This was exactly what he expected from a new species. In his long career he had conquered 47 different worlds, and the pattern was always the same. First contact led to a quick assessment of the enemy's capabilities, followed by total domination. How many ships do you estimate they possess? Kethver asked. Based on the construction techniques we observed, no more than a few dozen vessels. War Prime. This appears to be their primary exploration ship, which suggests they have not spread far from their homeworld. This news pleased Kethver greatly. Some species had surprised him in the past by having large fleets hidden in distant systems, but these humans seemed to be exactly what they appeared. A young race that had barely left their home planet. Excellent, he said. We will follow them to their world and end this quickly. Signaled the fleet to maintain pursuit formation. The 50 Zephyrian warships moved through hyperspace like a pack of predators following wounded prey. Each vessel was over twice the size of the human ship and carried enough firepower to level a city. Kethver had never lost a battle, and he did not intend to start now. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Helen Brooks received the emergency transmission from Captain Morrison with growing alarm. She sat in her office at Earth Command headquarters reading the message for the third time, trying to process what it meant. Hostile first contact, she said aloud to her empty office. 50 enemy vessels pursuing Liberty home. Helen immediately activated Protocol 7, which was the emergency defense plan for an alien invasion. Warning signals went out to every human military base from Luna to the outer colonies. Within hours, every available ship was being prepared for battle. Captain Nicole Davis received the alert while commanding the destroyer USS Freedom near Jupiter. She read the message twice before believing it was real. All hands, this is the captain. She announced over the ship's communication system, we have received word that hostile aliens are approaching Earth. This is not a drill. All crew to battle. Stations on Mars. Sergeant Pete Williams was training a group of Marine recruits when the alarm sounded. He looked up at the red sky of the colony world and wondered if he would ever see it again. Listen up, Marines, he shouted to his trainees. Looks like we're about to find out if all this training was worth it. Pack your gear, we're shipping out. Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson was overseeing mining operations in the asteroid belt when her ship received the emergency broadcast. She looked at her crew of civilian miners and made a quick decision. Boys, we just got called up for military service, she announced. Anyone who wants to fight for Earth, stay aboard. Anyone who doesn't can take a shuttle to the nearest station. Not a single miner left the ship. Lisa Carter worked frantically aboard the Liberty as it raced toward Earth, analyzing every piece of data they had collected about the alien ships. She needed to find some weakness that could help humanity survive the coming battle. Their weapons are energy-based, she reported to Captain Morrison, but their power systems seem to be centralized. If we could overload their main generators, how do we do that? Jake asked. I'm not sure yet, Captain, but I'm working on it. Commander Rick Hayes was also studying the alien ships, but from a tactical perspective. Captain, their formation flying is perfect. Too perfect. They move like a single organism rather than individual ships. What does that tell us? Jake wanted to know. It tells me they've never had to adapt to chaos, Captain. They fight like everything is planned and organized. What happens when the plan falls apart back on Earth? Admiral Brooks assembled her senior staff for an emergency meeting. The conference room filled with the best military minds humanity had to offer. The situation is simple, she told them. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy we know nothing about. Any suggestions? General Frank Stone, the head of Space Marines, spoke first. We could evacuate the major population centers and fight a guerrilla war from the outer colonies. That's surrender, Admiral Brooks replied. Next idea, Captain Roy Mitchell. The chief engineer had a different thought. What if we don't fight them the way they expect? These aliens have probably conquered dozens of species using the same tactics. What if we do something completely different? Admiral Brooks looked interested, explained. Every species they've fought has probably tried to match them ship for ship in traditional fleet battles. What if we don't play by their rules? The room fell silent as everyone considered this idea. Human military doctrine had always emphasized flexibility and adaptation over rigid formations and honor-bound tactics. It's worth considering. Admiral Brooks said, "What do we know about their weaknesses?" According to the Liberty's data, they rely heavily on formation, fighting, and coordinated attacks, reported Intelligence Chief Karen White. They've never faced an opponent that fights dirty. Admiral Brooks smiled for the first time since receiving the alert. Then it's time they learned what dirty fighting looks like as the alien fleet approached the edge of the solar system. Humanity prepared for a battle unlike anything they had ever faced. But War Prime Kethva had no idea that he was about to encounter a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war, not against weaker opponents, but against themselves. The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a dark storm cloud, bringing death to everything in its path. War Prime Kethva stood on his bridge watching the tactical display show him the human home system. For the first time scanned for defensive positions, he ordered his crew, "I want to know where they are hiding their fleet." Sub-Commander Vextor worked at his station, running deep scans of the system. War Prime, "I'm detecting ships throughout the system, but they are not in formation. They appear to be scattered randomly." Kethva frowned at this information. Every species he had conquered before gathered their ships into defensive formations around their homeworld. This scattered deployment made no tactical sense. "How many vessels?" he asked. "Approximately 100, War Prime, but many appear to be converted civilian ships with improvised weapons." This brought a harsh laugh from Kethva. "They are so desperate they arm their cargo haulers. This will be easier than I thought." What Kethva did not understand was that Admiral Brooks had deliberately scattered the human fleet to avoid giving the aliens a single target to destroy. Every ship, from the newest battlecruiser to converted mining vessels, had been given specific coordinates and told to wait for the signal. Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson floated in her modified mining ship near the asteroid belt watching the alien fleet approach Earth. Her crew of former miners had spent the last 2 days welding armor plates and mounting weapons on their industrial vessel. "Amy, this is crazy," said her chief engineer, Bill Parker, as he looked out at the massive alien ships we're going up against those monsters in a mining ship. "Bill, those aliens expect us to line up and fight fair," Amy replied, "but we didn't become the dominant species on Earth by fighting fair." Near Mars, Captain Nicole Davis commanded a small squadron of destroyers that were hiding behind the Red Planet, waiting for their moment to strike. She had served in 3 different wars before this and understood that sometimes the best strategy was to let the enemy think they had already won. "All ships maintain radio silence." She ordered her squadron, "Wait for my signal on Earth." Admiral Brooks watched the alien fleet advance through the system from her command center deep underground. The main display showed every ship in the human fleet as small blue dots, while the alien vessels appeared as large red triangles. "They're heading straight for Earth," reported her tactical officer. "No deviation from course." "Good," Admiral Brooks said. "Let them come." General Frank Stone looked at her with concern. "Admiral, they outnumber us and outgun us. Shouldn't we try to stop them before they reach the planet?" "Frank, these aliens have been conquering species for 1,000 years using the same tactics. They expect us to throw everything we have at them in one big battle. Instead, we're going to teach them something new." The first phase of Admiral Brooks' plan began when the alien fleet reached the orbit of Mars. Captain Davis led her destroyers in a surprise attack on the rear guard of the Zephyrian formation. The human ships came out from behind Mars, firing everything they had before disappearing back into the planet's shadow. On his flagship, Kethva felt the impacts from the human weapons and snarled in anger, "They dare attack us from ambush. All ships turn and destroy them." But when the Zephyrian ships moved to pursue the human destroyers, they found nothing but empty space. The humans had vanished as quickly as they appeared. "Where did they go?" Kethva demanded. "Unknown, War Prime," Vextor replied. "They appear to have used the planet's magnetic field to mask their escape." This was the first time in his career that Kethva had been surprised by an enemy tactic, and he did not like the feeling. The Zephyrians reformed their battle line and continued toward Earth, but now they were watching for more ambush. The second phase began near the asteroid belt, where Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson and her mining crews put their industrial knowledge to deadly use. They had spent days moving asteroids into position and filling them with explosives. When the alien fleet passed through the belt, Amy triggered the charges. Massive rocks exploded around the Zephyrian ships, sending debris flying in all directions. The aliens were forced to break formation to avoid the worst of the bombardment, while smaller human ships darted between the asteroids, launching hit-and-run attacks. "This is not how civilized species conduct warfare," Kethva roared as his ship shook from another impact. "They fight like animals." What Kethva did not realize was that humans had learned their fighting techniques from millions of years of evolution on a planet where everything was trying to kill them. Honor and formation flying meant nothing when survival was at stake. Sergeant Pete Williams and his Marine units were preparing for the third phase of the battle. From their positions on Luna, they had converted the moon's mining facilities into weapon emplacements and were ready to show the aliens what human ground forces could do. Remember, Marines, Pete told his troops, these aliens think they're the toughest predators in the galaxy. Time to show them what real predators look like. As the battered Zephyrian fleet finally approached Earth orbit, they had lost 6 ships and dozens more were damaged. Kethva stared at the blue planet below him, trying to understand how these primitive humans were causing him so much trouble. War Prime, perhaps we should reconsider our approach, suggested Vextal. These humans fight differently than other species. No, Kethva snarled, we are Zephyrians. We do not retreat from inferior beings. Prepare for orbital bombardment, but Admiral Brooks was ready for this too. As soon as the alien ships moved into bombardment position, every remaining human vessel in the system converged on them from all directions. The final battle for Earth was about to begin, and the Zephyrians were about to learn that underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake. The space around Earth erupted into chaos as human ships attacked the Zephyrian fleet from every direction at once. War Prime Kethva watched his perfect battle formation dissolve into a swirling mess of individual ship duels as the humans refused to fight in organized lines. All ships maintain formation, he ordered, but his commands were lost in the confusion as human vessels darted between his larger ships like angry insects. Captain Nicole Davis led her destroyers in a wild charge directly at the alien flagship, firing every weapon they had while screaming battle cries over the open communication channels. For Earth, she shouted as her ship's guns blazed for humanity. The Zephyrians had never experienced anything like this before. Every species they conquered fought with discipline and honor, following the established rules of space warfare. These humans seemed to have no rules at all. Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson coordinated the converted civilian ships in attacks that made no military sense but somehow worked perfectly. Mining ships rammed into alien vessels while cargo haulers launched improvised missiles made from industrial equipment. Bill hit them with the plasma cutters. Amy ordered her engineer as they closed with a Zephyrian cruiser. Amy, those are mining tools, not weapons, Bill protested. Everything's a weapon if you use it right, she replied. The plasma cutters, designed for asteroid mining, sliced through the alien ship's hull like it was made of paper. The Zephyrian crew had never seen industrial equipment used as a weapon, and their shields were not designed to stop such unconventional attacks. On the surface of Luna, Sergeant Pete Williams watched the battle through his scope as he prepared his own surprise for the aliens. His Marines had been busy during the approach, setting up something special to target those big ships hovering over the planet. He told his rocket teams, show them what human ground forces can do. The surface to space missiles launched from hidden positions all over the moon, streaking up toward the Zephyrian fleet. The aliens detected the incoming projectiles, but assumed they were standard military weapons. They were wrong. Pete had loaded the missiles with something much more dangerous than explosives. Each warhead contained thousands of small transmitters that began broadcasting human music, television shows, radio programs, and internet content directly into the alien communication networks. Where Prime Kethva clutched his head in pain as human voices filled his ship's audio systems. Rock music blasted from every speaker while human laughter echoed through the corridors. His crew stumbled around, confused and disoriented by the alien sounds. Turn it off, he roared. Stop this noise, but his technicians could not shut down the broadcasts. The human transmitters were designed to override every frequency and channel the Zephyrians used. For a species that had never experienced human culture, the sudden assault of Earth music and entertainment was devastating. Lisa Carter had been working around the clock analyzing the alien ships from her position aboard the Liberty. And she had finally found what she was looking for. Captain, I've got it, she told Jake Morrison excitedly. Their power systems are linked together in a network. If we can overload one ship, it will cascade through their entire fleet. How do we overload them? Jake asked. We need to get close enough to hack into their main computer, Lisa explained, but it would be a suicide mission. Jake looked at his crew and saw the determination in their faces. Not necessarily. Rick, what's the status on our engines, Commander? Rick Hayes checked his instruments. We've got enough power for one more jump, Captain, but the ship won't survive much more damage then. We better make it count, Jake decided. Lisa, prep your hack. Rick, plot a course for their flagship. We're going to end this. The Liberty broke away from the main battle and began its final approach toward War Prime Kethva's command ship. A small human vessel dodged through alien fire while Lisa worked frantically to prepare her computer. Virus, meanwhile, the psychological warfare was having its intended effect on the Zephyrian fleet. Ships began breaking formation as their crews panicked from the constant assault of human culture. Some vessels tried to flee, while others fired randomly at anything that moved. Captain Roy Mitchell had been coordinating the defense platforms around Earth, and he noticed the change in alien behavior immediately. "Admiral, they're falling apart," he reported to Helen Brooks. "Whatever we're doing to them, it's working good," Admiral Brooks replied. "All ships press the attack. Don't give them time to recover." The human fleet closed in for the kill as more Zephyrian ships succumbed to the chaos. The aliens, who had spent 1,000 years conquering through fear, were experiencing terror for the first time in their species. History War Prime Kethfer tried desperately to regain control of his fleet, but every order he gave was drowned out by human music. His perfect war machine was disintegrating around him as his soldiers discovered what it felt like to be afraid. "Sub-Commander Vextol," he called out over the noise. "Order all ships to retreat," but Vextol was on the floor covering his ears, as a human child's laughter played endlessly through the ship's speakers. The sound that should have been innocent and joyful was alien and terrifying to creatures who had never known childhood or play. As the Liberty approached the flagship, Dr. Carter smiled grimly as she prepared to upload her virus. "Captain, we're in range," she announced. "Do it," Jake ordered. The virus flowed through the alien computer network like digital poison, spreading from ship to ship and shutting down power systems throughout the fleet. One by one, the great Zephyrian warships went dark as their engines failed and their weapons fell. Silent War Prime Kethfer watched his mighty fleet die around him and finally understood that he had not invaded a primitive world. He had walked into a trap set by a species that had been preparing for this fight since before they left their planet. The crippled Zephyrian fleet drifted helplessly through space as their power systems failed one by one. War Prime Kethfer stood in the emergency lighting of his command bridge, trying to understand how his 1,000-year conquest streak had ended. In complete disaster. Sub-Commander status report. He called to Vextol, who was struggling to work at a backup console. "War Prime, we have lost power to engines and weapons. Life support is running on emergency reserves. 43 of our ships are completely dead in space." Kethfer felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career: defeat. The humans had not just beaten his fleet, they had humiliated it using tactics no civilized species would ever consider. Captain Jake Morrison brought the Liberty alongside the alien flagship and prepared for the final phase of the human victory. Dr. Lisa Carter had not only shut down the Zephyrian ships, she had also gained access to their databases. "Captain, I'm reading their files now," she reported excitedly. "Jake, this is incredible. They've conquered 47 different species over the past 1,000 years. Any of them still alive?" Jake asked. "Some of them, yes. According to these records, the Zephyrians keep conquered populations as slaves on various worlds throughout their empire." Commander Rick Hayes looked up from his tactical station with a grim expression. "Captain, we need to decide what to do with the survivors. Some of their ships still have partial power." Jake considered their options carefully. The human fleet had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The Zephyrians still controlled dozens of star systems and had enslaved millions of beings. "Lisa, can you track their other fleets?" he asked. "Already working on it, Captain. Their computers have detailed records of ship positions, supply lines, and command structures. We could cripple their entire empire if we move fast enough." Admiral Helen Brooks received the tactical data from the Liberty and immediately saw the opportunity. The Zephyrians had built their empire on fear and superior technology, but they had never faced an opponent that could turn their own systems against them. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Brooks." She broadcast to every human ship in the system. "We have access to enemy intelligence. Prepare for follow-up operations." Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson and her converted mining ships began the grim task of boarding the disabled alien vessels. Her crews had experience working in dangerous environments, and they moved through the dark Zephyrian ships like professional salvage operators. "Amy, this is like nothing I've ever seen," reported her engineer Bill Parker as they explored the alien flagship. "These corridors are built for creatures twice our size. Just focus on the mission." "Bill," Amy replied, "we need to secure any survivors and gather intelligence." The boarding teams found the Zephyrian crew huddled in their emergency shelters, traumatized by their first taste of defeat. Many of the aliens were catatonic, having never experienced the concept of losing a battle sergeant. Pete Williams led his Marines in the systematic capture of aliens personnel for interrogation. He had fought in enough wars to know that prisoners were valuable sources of information. "These aliens are tough-looking, but they're not fighters," he reported to his commanding officer. "They're conquerors who've never had to fight for their lives." The difference was crucial. The Zephyrians were skilled at destroying weaker opponents, but they had no experience with desperate survival combat. Humans, on the other hand, had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting for every advantage. Captain Nicole Davis coordinated the pursuit of fleeing Zephyrian ships using the tracking data from their computers. Her destroyers hunted down the scattered remnants of the alien fleet like wolves chasing wounded prey. Contact bearing 27 mark for her tactical officer reported. Single Zephyrian cruiser attempting to reach hyperspace, intercept and disable. Nicole ordered no one leaves this system without our permission. The human ships had been modified during the battle using salvaged alien technology. Chief Engineer Ron Mitchell had been leading teams that stripped useful equipment from disabled Zephyrian vessels and installed it on human ships. Admiral, we've got their shield generators working on 3 of our cruisers, he reported to Helen. Brooks were also reverse engineering their weapons systems. This was another lesson the Zephyrians had never learned. Humans were natural scavengers and improvisers who could adapt enemy technology faster than most species could understand it. War Prime Kethfa was brought aboard the Liberty under heavy guard, where he came face to face with Captain Morrison for the first time. The alien commander was massive compared to the human, but he moved like a defeated creature. You have committed an act of war against the Zephyrian Empire, Kethfa said in broken English that his computer had translated. My people will come for revenge. Jake looked at the alien commander with something between pity and contempt. Your people are about to learn what happened to the last species that threatened Earth. Dr. Carter showed Kethfa the tactical display that revealed the locations of every Zephyrian base and fleet throughout their empire. We have all of your ship positions, supply routes and command codes. She explained, your empire is about to experience what 47 other species felt when you conquered them for the first time in his life. Kethfa understood what his victims had experienced. The hopelessness of facing a superior force with no chance of victory or escape. You cannot destroy an empire that has existed for 1,000 years. He protested. Watch us, Jake replied. Simply, the human fleet began to disperse throughout space using their own navigation data to strike at key targets. Admiral Brooks had decided that the best defense was a devastating offense that would cripple the alien empire before it could recover. The hunt had begun and humanity was no longer the prey. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, the Zephyrian Empire was crumbling under the relentless human assault. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of Kethfa's former throne room on the capital world of Zephyr Prime, watching the aliens' empire burn round them. The humans had not simply conquered the Zephyrians, they had liberated every enslaved species in their territory. 47 different races now fought alongside human forces as they dismantled the alien war machine piece by piece, while Prime Kethfa knelt among the bodies of his honor guard in the wreckage of his command chamber. The massive alien was wounded and alone as Jake approached him for their final confrontation. Your empire is finished, Jake told the defeated commander. Your fleets are destroyed and your slave worlds are free. Kethfa raised his yellow eyes to meet the human's gaze. How did you do this? We were the strongest species in the galaxy. Jake sat down on a piece of rubble so he could look the alien in the eyes as he explained. You were strong against weak opponents. You conquered species that had no experience with real warfare. What do you mean? Kethfa asked. You spent 1,000 years fighting downward against primitives and slaves, Jake continued. We spent millions of years fighting each other. Every human weapon, every tactic, every strategy was developed fighting opponents just as smart and desperate as we were. Kethfa struggled to understand this concept. You fought your own species. We fought everything, Jake replied. Our planet tried to kill us with weather predators, disease, and natural disasters. We fought each other in thousands of wars. We learned to adapt or die. The alien commander looked around at the ruins of his civilization. But we had superior technology, Jake nodded. You did. But technology means nothing without the will to use it effectively. You fought with honor and formation and rules. We fought to win. Dr. Lisa Carter entered the chamber carrying her tablet full of data about the Zephyrian Empire. Captain, we've finished analyzing their records. It's worse than we thought. How much worse? Jake asked. They didn't just conquer those 47 species, she explained. They completely destroyed 12 different civilizations. Entire races extinct because they resisted Zephyrian rule. Jake felt anger building inside him as he looked at Kethfa. How many billions died because of your empire? It was necessary, the alien replied weakly. The strong must rule the weak. No, Jake said firmly, the strong must protect the weak. That's what separates civilization from barbarism. Commander Rick Hayes appeared in the doorway of the chamber. Captain, we've got reports coming in from all sectors. The liberation fleets have secured the last Zephyrian strongholds. Jake nodded, but kept his eyes on Kethfa. It's over. Your people can surrender and learn to live in peace, or they can keep fighting and face extinction. Why do you offer mercy? Kethfa asked. We would have shown you none because that's what makes us different from you, Jake replied. We don't conquer for pleasure or glory. We fight to protect what we love. The alien commander struggled to his feet, using the wall for support. I do not understand your species. You understand us perfectly, Jake corrected him. You're just afraid to admit it. Deep down you know that if your people had faced real opposition earlier, they never would have become conquerors. Kethva was quiet for a long moment as he processed this truth. What happens to us now? Your surviving people will be relocated to a single world under human supervision, Jake explained. You'll learn to farm and build and create instead of destroy. The galaxy has had enough of Zephyrian conquest, and me, Kethva asked. Jake drew his sidearm and aimed it at the alien's chest. You personally are responsible for the deaths of billions of innocent beings. There has to be justice. I was following the way of my people, Kethva protested. Then your people's way was wrong, Jake replied. Evil is evil, regardless of who does it or why. Kethva closed his yellow eyes and accepted his fate. Will you at least tell me how you did it? How did such a young species defeat an empire? Jake considered the question carefully. We adapted. Every time you hit us, we learned something new. Every time you tried a tactic, we found a counter. You were fighting the same war you fought for 1,000 years, but we were evolving. Evolution, Kethva repeated the word slowly, the fundamental difference between our species. Jake explained. You conquered weaker opponents and stayed the same. We fought equals and grew stronger. The alien commander opened his eyes one last time. What will you do with this power? Will you become like us? Jake shook his head. We're going home. The galaxy can govern itself without human interference. We just wanted to be left alone. You could rule everything, Kethva said with confusion. Why do you not take what you have won? Because ruling an empire would change us into something. We don't want to be, Jake replied. We'd rather be explorers than conquerors. Kethva finally understood the crucial difference between humans and Zephyrians. You fight to preserve what you are. We fought to become something more. Yes, Jake confirmed, and that's why you lost. The alien commander had one final question as Jake's finger tightened on the trigger. What will you call this victory? Jake thought for a moment about everything humanity had learned during the war. We'll call it the day the galaxy learned that the prey can evolve into predators. Kethva managed a weak smile as he prepared for death. What is the word in your language for this evolution? Jake looked into the alien's yellow eyes as he pulled the trigger and spoke the single word that summarized everything about human nature and why the Zephyrian Empire had been doomed from the moment they chose Earth as their target. Adapt.